because he and his family regularly worship with us here at Hope Church. And some of you know Eric as assistant professor of lighting and sound design at Hope College, where he teaches in the Department of Dance and the Department of Theater. And he serves in both departments as a designer and technician for a plethora of productions throughout the academic year. I understand, yep, you both just worked on Dance 50 as well. But did you know that he also has worked on various stages in a whole variety of places that I found fascinating? The exploratory storefront theaters in Chicago and the John F. Kennedy Center for the Performing Arts in Washington. He has worked at the Sharon L. Morse Performing Arts Center, the Studi Theater in the Villages in Florida, and the now closed Oracle Theater also in Chicago. But did you know these few facts about Eric? He is an avid collector of comic books. He is a longtime Detroit Red Wings fan. I do believe they won.
Yeah, they won yesterday. They play this afternoon in Chicago. It's the first time that Patrick Kane's going to be back there as past being a Blackhawk. They're also retiring Chris Chelios' jersey tonight, so it's going to be a fun night for the Red Wings as well.
Oh, yeah. That's a fan. Yep. And he listens.
Currently in the first wild card spot. Let's go.
And he listens to more podcasts than you could probably imagine. But most importantly, fascinatingly enough, you could follow along with the antics of his Lego alter ego on Instagram at Lego Eric. And yes, I told him that we were just at the Brick Bash yesterday in Ann Arbor, where the Mishlug, the Lego people, had one of the largest displays they've ever done. So we were talking Lego just a bit. Yeah, our 16-year-old grandson is a Lego lover.
Nice.
Yeah.
Very good.
Yeah. So here's.
Yeah, whenever possible, I have a Lego version of myself that I carry in my pocket, and rather than taking photos of like selfies everywhere, this is a way to document my life without that. So my Instagram is just pictures of a small plastic version of myself I carry in my pocket, which is not at all strange.
It's great. Yeah, my grandson does the same thing.
Nice. Very cool.
Yeah. Welcome, Eric. We're looking forward to today.
Thank you. Yeah. So thank you. Yeah, thank you for that lovely introduction. So yes, I work in the dance and theater departments at Hope. I do lighting and sound design. I do more lighting than sound. I've got a couple other colleagues that help me with the lighting and sound for both the dance and theater departments, and one of them is Ken. So Ken and I work very closely together. So this morning, as I came in the door, I did the classic, like, do I have my keys, my wallet, my whatever? And I felt like something was missing, and it was my work keys. And I realized that something in my deep inner brain was able to know, this feels like a work day. I'm with Ken doing technological things. Why don't I have my keys? Oh, because my keys don't do anything in this building. So this feels very normal for us. I'm in my 5th year as faculty at Hope. My wife and my wife Katie and I started attending Hope Church regularly last spring. If you don't recognize us, it's probably because you've been distracted by our kids. This is them. So that's Grayson on the left there, and Cassandra, Cass on the right, all of the above. We mentioned comic books. If you know your Batman sidekicks, both Grayson and Cassandra are references to 2 of them. And then there we are at Christmas in the sanctuary. So, also very important to note is Mr. Giraffe. Mr. Giraffe is an important member of our family that goes a lot of places. So this talk that I'm giving today was kind of Ken's idea, actually. So there's a thing that Hope College does with pre-tenured faculty called Continuum. So this is the official definition of what continuum is at Hope. I'll let you read that if you like, but I'll give you the short version if you just want to listen. So continuum is a program for pre-tenured faculty to explore where our faith meets our research. A lot of folks that are coming into a place like Hope College where they've maybe spent graduate school in a secular institution or have taught for many years at other institutions where you may be a person of faith, but your faith and your research are not in direct dialogue. This is an opportunity for pre-tenure faculty to really engage with that as a collective. So there's basically, it's a week of classes and readings in mid-May. So I participated in that 2 years ago this coming May, the week before my daughter was born. And then what we do is we do a presentation, a lecture, much like this, sometime in the following school year. So not this past fall, but the fall before is when I originally gave a version of this talk. The goal here is it's kind of a tricky speech to give. It's meant to be a little bit about who I am, how I got to where I am, how my faith has been impacted by all of that and has impacted that in turn, and how my research is connected to that. And also brag about myself a little bit. Which is a thing that, as a Midwesterner, we're not very comfortable doing, but I do my best. So here's the structure. Here's what we're going to kind of go through here. My upbringing, background, my faith foundation, how I found lighting specifically, my growth as a designer and a person of faith, sort of my current research and faith connection to that, and then some time for some Q&A. And as mentioned, that's Lego Eric. A helpful way to, again, it's a way to show what I'm working on without showing something that's incomplete, without showing, because everything, either he's in focus or the things behind him are in focus. So an interesting balance. Okay, so when I was currently, my research in the world of academia, we talk about research, which for me, I'm not writing the next great American novel. I'm not researching the inner workings of the historical Christian faith. I'm not researching the cutting, bleeding edge of what's happening with nanotechnology. My work is not in a lab. My lab is performance spaces. My lab is theaters. And so my research in the arts, the arts within academia sometimes feels like a little bit of square peg round hole, but we make it work. And one of the things that we do is that research becomes what we call creative works. So my doing shows, both at Hope and off campus, is my research, is that aspect. So whatever my current show is that I'm working on is my research, is my project. So when I originally gave this speech, or a version of this, our current show at the time was a show called Silent Sky. Silent Sky is a play by Lauren Gunderson. It follows the true story of 19th century astronomer Henrietta Leavitt, who ultimately figured out the basis for how we now measure distances between heavenly bodies, stars and planets and nebula, etc. Basically, she observed the pulsing of light, figured out that you could extrapolate that and connect that to distance, and figure the basis of how we do that now. Really very cool. Henrietta, in this play, she has a sister. Their father, who's not seen in the play, is a minister, but her sister Margaret is sort of the paragon of the religious approach to life, and is connected to that aspect of her faith in a really strong way. And Henrietta does not discard her faith, but she pushes against it in interesting ways. And I think I find a kindred spirit in Henrietta. So the opening line of this play is, "Heaven's up there, they say. Pearly clouds, pearly gates, they say. They don't know much about astronomy, I say. The science of light on high, of all that is far off and lonely and stuck in the deepest dark of space, dark but for billions and billions of exceptions. And I insist on the exceptional." I really like that last phrase. I'm not somebody who's often moved to tear up just by text, and this show does it for me. So the title of this talk is Let There Be Light. Let's borrow another biblical phrase and start with, in the beginning. So in the beginning, so I was raised by two ministers. My parents, Tom and Wendy Van Tassell, co-pastor Congregational Church in Northwest Iowa, a small town called Spencer. They were there for 23 years. Before that, we were in Lansing, Michigan, working where they were at Plymouth Congregational Church that no longer exists. My folks met at Hope College. You can see the snazzy Hope College Letterman's jacket there. It's a good look. That's me and Dad out probably further on the Lake Michigan ice than Grandma would have been excited about, but she didn't know, so it's fine. That's me rocking the too short pants and the white socks with the loafers, hanging out with my sister there. She's in Philadelphia, she and her husband and their son, and she works with Ronald McDonald House out there. That's the baptism of our son Grayson there. They're not really part of the in the beginning part, but it's still nice to see. We're going to be going through new member classes here in the next month, and probably looking at doing a baptism for the other one. So we can look forward to that. So I bring all this up to say that I grew up in a household where faith was not only an active part, but consistently active, right? When your parents are ministers, it's the whole thing. It's dinner conversation, it's in the car, it's on the way to church, it's on the way home, it's all of it. I feel like that typically ends up with children of ministers have a tendency to either firmly reject that or become ministers themselves. And I think a few of us find the path in between, and I think that's sort of where I landed. But it changes the way I approach art, it changes the way I approach my life, it changes the way I approach the people around me. Also, it made me really good at small talk, because you have to be. When you're folks are ministers, you get a degree in small talk. So I went to Hope College, and so these are photos specifically from freshman year of college. I came into college as an actor, as so many of us do. This is me here in Carousel, my fall of my freshman year. And that's like in the Dream Ballet in Act 2, where I'm playing like a 5-year-old boy frolicking on the beach. It's the same show when I'm playing an adult in a different scene. I was also in 12th Street Harmony, the men's a cappella group on campus. And this is just some guys I was buddies with. I acted all 4 years. I'm the guy with the long hair in most of these shots. But while I was at Hope, I was developing new interests in other parts of performing and art. So Hope, now we go into recruitment mode. Hope College is kind of unique in that we pay all of our students that work on our lighting and sound crew and our scene shop crew and our costume shop crew. We had a big recruiting day on Friday, so if you'd like my whole spiel, I can give it to you. When I found out, wait a minute, sophomore year, I said, wait a minute, I could be getting paid to work in a building that I already like with people I already like, doing stuff that I don't know but could get me jobs in the future. Why have I not been doing that? So I started working on a light crew. And in doing that, I started to really enjoy that. But I was also discovering a passion for directing. I had a lot of things that I was excited about. That bottom left image there is from a show called Strider that I co-directed with a faculty member and a fellow student my senior year. The bottom right image here, this is from a student-produced production of Jane Eyre the musical. An overly ambitious project for a group of students to take on, but pretty ill-advised. But I think it's telling that the entire design team of that, the lighting designer, the costume designer, the sound designer, the scenic designer, all of us went to graduate school and are making our living in the arts. Take the big swing sometimes, even when everybody in the faculty goes like, it was a dumb idea. To be clear, they approached many of us to direct it, including me, and I said, oh, I won't direct it. Absolutely not. That's a very stupid thing to do. I'll design lights for you, but I'm not going to direct your silly show. And then the last image there is a photo from a show called Perfect Pie that was co-designed by myself and a faculty member, Perry Landis, who actually goes here. So when I left Hope College, I would have said that I was a director who designed lights because I was good at it. And I wasn't identifying so much as an actor anymore. I moved to Chicago. In Chicago, I got some cool opportunities to do a lot of cool things. Was getting a lot more work as a lighting designer than I was as a director. And that was okay. But I sort of started to realize maybe I'm not a director who designs lights. Maybe I'm a lighting designer who directs, which was then 2 years of additional like self-reflection and contemplation of, okay, so what does that mean? There's also a section in there where I seriously considered going to seminary. Talk about more about that in a second. The one thing to point out here, sort of a highlight, this image here is from an award show called the Jeff Awards. The Jeff Awards are sort of Chicago's version of the Tonys. They have both a equity awards, meaning for theaters that have union acting, union actors, and non-equity Jeff Awards for non-union actor houses. So I have a non-equity Jeff nomination. And it's an honor just to be nominated, and that feels like a thing that people just sort of say by rote. But I know people who've worked in Chicago for decades and don't have one of those, so I'm pretty proud of that. So around the same time, I was attending, for a while I attended a congregational church in the suburbs that was associated with the National Association of Congregational Christian Churches that I had grown up with. Then for a while I was attending a UCC church in the city, which is a different branch of congregationalism. And then when I met my wife, now wife, and started dating her, I started attending the Lutheran church that she grew up to in the suburbs, and within about 3 months I was playing Jesus. I think I got that role mostly because I brought my own hair and beard. So while this was going on, like I said, I seriously was considering going to seminary, to the point where I had stopped working with a theater company that I had worked with for several years, so that I could focus on visiting colleges and visiting schools and finding out more and going through a process of discernment to make that happen. Part of the influence on that was this logo on here, NAPF Hope, the National Association of Congregational Christian Churches that I grew up with, has two sort of youth organizations, the National Association of Pilgrim Fellowship, which is for high school students, and the Heritage of Pilgrim Endeavor, Hope. Interesting through line in my life with Hope. Welcome to being another part of that, Hope Church. Hope is this group is for completed high school through age 26. And so I was president of Hope, not this Hope or that Hope, for 2 different one-year terms. And that was a leadership position in a church organization, and I thrived in that role and really enjoyed that, and started really thinking about, well, maybe I should be going to seminary. Maybe I should be exploring this in a really deliberate way. I've always been curious about this. My approach to theology is I think, nuanced and rich and progressive, and there is room for that in the theological study that is out there. And maybe I wouldn't be a minister and have a flock per se, but maybe I'd go into academia, maybe I'd teach. Maybe theater's done with me, and maybe I'm done with theater. And then an interesting thing happened. Since I stopped working with the theater company that I'd been working a bunch with, several other theaters were like, hey, you're more available now. Do you want to come do something with us? And I was, okay. Yeah, let's do some of that. And started doing more with different groups. This eventually leads to me calling my parents in tears because I've been feeling like maybe I shouldn't go to seminary yet. Maybe someday. But maybe I should just, theater's not done with me. I'm not done with theater. The performing arts aren't done with me. And am I letting people down by changing my plan. I've been telling people for a year, I'm going to go start looking at seminaries. I'm going to start visiting schools. I'm going to go get a Master's of Divinity someplace. And am I letting down peers? Am I letting down mentors? Am I letting down God by deciding that that's not what's right? And ultimately, the response becomes, let there be light. Stop fighting it and do the thing that I'm good at, that I'm called to do. I struggle with the idea of called to do something because I think that for me, I'm not someone who's ever had that moment of like a voice in my head that sounds like a big booming person on a cloud saying, go, do lighting design. And I feel like when people say called, sometimes that's what they mean. And wow, that sounds great. That sounds really nice. But I think for a lot of us, it doesn't sound like that. And I think that that is a hard thing to wrestle with and grasp. But then ultimately, I do feel called to what it is that I do. These three images are from three very different times. On the left, we have a senior year of college, designing lights in the studio theater, focusing a light at Hope College. In the middle, that's when I was serving as technical director for Oracle Theater. I had built the set that is in process there. This is the show that I ended up getting my Jeff Award nomination for. I'm just dinking around between work and just taking a silly photo. And then the last is I've gone to graduate school, and this is me on break outside the theater, taking a 15-minute break before we go back in and keep working hard. When I was thinking about going to graduate school, a friend of mine said, yeah, right now you have your day job and you have your Batman job. You want to be Batman full-time. I was like, I do want to be Batman full-time. That sounds great. So why graduate school? For me, it was so I could do that job, so I could do this full-time in one way or another. I'd been having day jobs for 9 years in the city that helped pay my bills while I was getting paid a little bit for doing my art. But I wanted to get paid a full-time wage for doing what I loved doing. For me, I needed to do a couple things. I needed to fill in some gaps in my knowledge. Computer-aided drafting was a thing that wasn't taught at Hope until shortly after I graduated, so technology was changing. Also, intelligent lights, that means any light that can do more than just turn on and off, anything that can change colors or move or all those things. These are things that I didn't learn when I was a student because I had been out of academia a little bit too long. And then also networking comes with grad school. That's how you get jobs. A bunch of people come through, you find work through it. And then the last thing was earn 3 little letters, MFA. Master of Fine Arts. That's a terminal degree, which allows me to do stuff like teach at the collegiate level. Nice to have. In graduate school, I had a lot of cool experience. I got to work on a lot of neat stuff. I designed all kinds of stuff for theater and opera and dance. You can see some samples of paperwork there, all kinds of great things. One of the things that I think is important to note here about both grad school and my time in Chicago is that an interesting thing happens in connection to my faith. And that in those spaces, I went to grad school at the University of Illinois in Urbana-Champaign. I am the most religiously devout and potentially conservative of my community. And then, when I go someplace like Hope College, I am on the opposite end of that same spectrum. So depending on the room I'm in, I'm either seen as very devout or borderline heathen. And I am comfortable with that. That is, I say this, I make a joke. I think I'm more devout than borderline heathen. Though I suppose it depends on who you ask. My point there is that my time in graduate school that could be very isolating in terms of faith. But for me, it wasn't. There was something comforting about knowing that I was a solid rock in a river flowing around me, that I was firm in my faith. I had a foundation connected to the faith I'd grown up with, the relationship I have with God, my understanding of the world around me in that lens, even as the world around me progresses. Also, incidentally, I find that folks in the performing arts, theater, dance, music, even if they are not active in their faith now, oftentimes have a strong affinity for the theatricality of worship. because a lot of them grew up in a church, and in some cases that's where you have some of your first theatrical or performance experiences. So even if somebody doesn't practice, even if somebody has some religious trauma, they often are able to look at somebody like me and go, that's great. That's really good that you still have that. That is meaningful to you. It's not meaningful to me anymore, but I appreciate where you are, where I am, as a person of faith. And sometimes they'll even come to church and stuff because they like, oh, I like the songs, you know? So it's an interesting balance there. I like to mention that I find the theatrical in the theological and the theological in the theatrical. This goes back to both my training at Hope College and my training at my parents' dinner table. When we used to go to the movies, the discussion when we were in the car on the way home wasn't just, oh, I like the part with the big explosion. I like the part with the big kiss. I like the part where the big joke happened. It was, what allegories did we see? What comparisons to our lives? What is the relationship? What is this telling us about themes and values? Things like this. That's the conversations that we had at the dinner table at my house when we watched TV or movies. And if you approach art that way, art doesn't have to be religious art to find religion in it. Dinah Robbins, who's a just recently retired Hope faculty member who's also active at Hope Church, is fond of saying, I think my God understands theater. I like that phrase, and that's what she says to push back on folks that don't like that theater might push an envelope. And not all theater has to. One of my other colleagues, Rhett Ledke, who's new to the faculty at Hope, said the other day something really lovely that I'm going to try to capture because he said it so eloquently. A lot of his focus on theater is about community and about caring for a community, and caring for a community includes telling that community stories and also pushing that community. It's caring for that community by meeting that community exactly where it is and also asking that community questions. That's a tension that's really important in art. And sometimes some folks aren't going to like questions that are asked, but I think my God understands theater and can welcome wrestling with some of those questions. Also in graduate school, I got to design a lot of dance. More dance than I did theater or opera, actually. I've started to really develop that skill set, which is wonderful. It's served me incredibly well to eventually work here at Hope. A highlight that was mentioned in sort of the intro there was that a piece I designed lights on called Where We're Going was selected as a part of the American College Dance Association's National Festival at the Kennedy Center, which is sort of a highlight of my career of the last 10 years. Also, while in graduate school, I started reconnecting with Hope College through Hope Summer Repertory Theater, now Hope Repertory Theater. Started to be a little bit connected back with the folks around here. I then spent a year down in the Villages, Florida, which is the largest retirement community in the world, 120,000 retirees of very active, very cool people. And they need very active, very cool things to do. So there's a 1,000-seat performing arts center that I was the lighting director for. So these are shows on the right or sorry, on my right, your left, busking shows. That means shows that I've live mixed, bands that I just improvise lights on top of whatever they're doing. And the shows in the middle there are things that came through that I was the electrician making sure that they had what they needed to execute their design. And back at Hope, started in the fall of 2019. You'll notice the timing of 2019 means that within less than a year, everything changed. And Ken and I and others had to figure out new ways of doing things, which makes actually things like setting up the current setup here with this screen and that screen and going to YouTube and all this stuff. We are way better at that now, specifically because 2020. But yeah, these are just some images from a few things from the first few years of me being at Hope. Let's talk a little bit more now about my research, about my creative works, and how my active current work connects to my faith. We've talked about background, my background in faith. We've talked about background, my background in the arts. Now let's sort of merge the two. My work is tied to my faith in a lot of ways, but one of those ways is through the beauty of observation. Much of my faith is caught up in the glory of God's creation and observing that around us and trying to capture something of that and put it on stage. When I ask a student to observe the way light plays across the grass or the way the moonlight, I just drove back from the UP yesterday where I was responding to a performance. The way the light, the way the full moon gleams off the snow, so I didn't even need my headlights. I had them on, but just I could have done it without them. That is, for some students, observing something like that will be a religious experience. For others, it won't be. For others, it's a class assignment. But for some students, that will be a religious experience. And I think for me, it is sometimes. How does that, the way when I've shut off all the lights at my house, I'm the last one to bed and I'm walking back towards my bedroom, and the way the light catches my eye outside and I stop because I'm looking at what the light is doing to the tree in my backyard and how it is playing across the snow. That's a magical moment for me. That's a religious moment for me. And it's also getting filed away so that someday I'm going to put that on stage. I'm going to try and make that moment happen. One of the joys of my creative work, of my research, is that there's always a new problem to solve. There's always a new dance piece. There's always a new theater script. There's always a new song, whatever it is. I'm never going to get bored because I always get to tackle something new. There's always something new to solve, whether those things are on campus or off campus or whatever. When I originally did this talk, we did this on the stage of Silent Sky that was happening, and then at this point, I turned on some lights and we walked around and looked at stuff. I didn't want you to miss out on that part of it, but I have an okay video of Silent Sky. But during 2020, we did some really nice videos of some other stuff. So this is a dance concert. I'm not going to show you the whole dance concert. We'd be here for an hour and a half. I'm not even going to show you the whole dance piece that I'm going to share with you because it's about 15 to 20 minutes long. But we're going to show a little excerpt. There was a piece in this concert that was called To the Moon, choreographed by Tracy Dunbar, who was a guest artist. This is from the 2021 dance concert. It was choreographed for Tracy's grandmother, Barbara C. Walker, costume designed by Darlene Veenstra. Rehearsal director was Matt Farmer, and I was the lighting designer. This piece is, Tracy created this piece in the wake of his grandmother's death. It was a way for her to mourn, or a way for him to mourn her and celebrate her. It has 5 movements that correspond with the 5 stages of grief. We're just going to watch the last section. You'll see the costumes are a simple flowing garb. You'll see some of the folks have like a tabard hanging from their belt that is in different colors. Those were the soloists for each of the 5 movements. So that we'll be focusing the gal who's in the white tabard, which is corresponding with acceptance. But you'll see one for black for bargaining, red for anger, green for denial, and blue for depression. Hang on, we're going to hear Matt Farmer say good evening, and now we're going to move to 1 hour, 14 minutes, and 44 seconds. Right about, okay, we're going to get like a little bit of silence between pieces. So this is the very, very end of depression. The end of depression, that sounds great. So I share this to show an example of what lighting can be. Interesting thing about lighting design is that it is, for theatrical lighting design, this isn't me doing lighting of art piece where light is the only medium, right? There are people who do light sculpture, but even that, you've got something that you are lighting. Lighting always has to be in connection with something else. This is one of the things that was challenging about the pandemic for me. I need something to light. I can't sit in a room by myself and pour things from one test tube to another. I can't write a novel. I can't do my art, my work, without someone to work with. If you've got a dance piece, or you're working on one, then I can light it. If you've got a show you want to put on, then I can light it. But lights on a bare room are nothing. Similarly, a room with a theater piece in it that doesn't have light is also nothing, different problem. So this is a really beautiful piece. Like I say, we're just going to watch this final few minutes here. After going through these other stages of grief, this becomes a really cathartic moment. And try to pay attention to lighting, a thing that we don't often do. So. Little herky-jerky on the video there, just because we're going Zoom connection there. But yeah, I think that my work isn't always that clearly connected to faith. But sometimes it is. But even when it's just lighting somebody at a podium, if I'm doing it right, I'm making their work better. I'm celebrating them and their gifts. I'm celebrating my gifts. I have been blessed by, I don't want to say I'm blessed with abilities. I've been blessed with a passion to work very hard to gain abilities that I'm really proud of.
Good evening,
Hi, Ken. Hi,
and
Matt.
welcome to the Hope College
We're
Dance
good, Matt.
Department.
Thanks, Matt. Stay there. Next one. All right. So I mentioned the silent sky before. There's frequent interactions in silent sky. This is from the very end of the show, as she finally is permitted, through a little bit of finagling. She breaks into a telescope that she's not supposed to use, and she gets to finally see all of the things that she's been wanting to see and that she's been researching. It's a really beautiful ending to this play. We did some pretty impressive lighting things with it. I earned a meritorious achievement award, actually. But the play I mentioned has these frequent interactions between Henrietta and her sister Margie, who is more connected to her faith. And near the end of the show, Henrietta says, they're talking about this relationship, her understanding of science and faith. And Henrietta says, something like souls. I just know that you worry about those things, and I don't want you to think that I don't believe in anything. I do. Just a different kind of faith in grand observation. And Margie says, which is comforting? Henry says, which is nimble. And that is comforting. My heaven is a cosmos deep in a gorgeous void. Sitting in tech rehearsal, which is when we add all of the lighting to all of the rehearsal that's been happening with actors. Actors have been practicing for 6 to 8 weeks, and I show up, and Ken shows up right near the end to add lights and sound to make it all come together. And sitting in tech rehearsal for Silent Sky in the fall of 2022, I had a realization. Without thinking, I said out loud something to the effect of, I get to do my favorite thing today. And I was quiet, and I processed that for a moment, and I realized that it was true. It is true. This is my favorite thing. The passion that I've been blessed with, that I've worked really hard to do, this gives me so much joy. And for me, that is a connection to my faith. That is a connection to my relationship with God, that I get to be a part of that God and that my exchange with God is related to the work that I do, is related to the passion and talent and skills that I have. So to Henrietta's point, I think my heaven, I think it looks an awful lot like this, like designing lights. If I don't get to do this in heaven, I'll be really disappointed. I'll end this with the very final lines from Silent Sky, and then we'll open up to questions here, which is great because my battery is getting low. Henrietta ends the play with, because wonder will always get us there. Those of us who insist that there is much more beyond ourselves, and I'll insert that much more beyond ourselves could be God, could be the heavens, could be science, could be a relationship with each other. Those of us who insist that there is much more beyond ourselves, and I do, and there's a reason we measure it all in light. Excuse me. Yeah. So, questions? David, I think there's a mic someplace. Here we are.
Dave Myers, and thank you so much. I really enjoyed that. You mentioned earlier in your presentation the theatricality of worship and thinking about theater and worship, and I'd like to push you a little bit on that, Eric.
Yeah.
With a two-part question. One, just if you have anything more to say about that,
Absolutely.
or about how to effectively stage worship within the constraints of who we are at a place like Hope Church.
Yeah.
And a corollary question, that is, as you think about that, do you think only about what's happening on the stage or also what the audience is experiencing? And let me frame that with an example. So occasionally I attend Hope Church Chapel, Hope College Chapel, and I sit in the back. It's all staged. There's a powerful band and a big screen and so forth. But I look at the people around me, and they're standing there. They're not participating. They just kind of have blank looks on their faces as they watch the stage.
Yeah.
At the other end of the continuum, in my experience, although I haven't experienced it recently here at Hope Church, the most spiritually uplifting experiences have been during communion, when a cappella, with no sound coming from the organ, we sing a Taizé chant. And so it's built into the theatricality of the experience, if you will,
Absolutely.
that we as a community are now owning this experience. Is there a place for that as you think about
Yeah.
worship in the theater? And do you want to say anything
Yeah,
more about
absolutely.
worship in the
So,
theater?
I mean, there's so many layers to this, and my brain goes several different directions. The power of singing communally, I think, is remarkable. I'm going to take a jump on a side thing here and to talk about this specifically. Years ago, I think it was an ESPN article, talked about, we're in spring training now for baseball, said it's spring training, welcome to the communal singing part of the year. There are very few places aside from church where we all sing together, and one of them is baseball games. That whether you're singing Take Me Out to the Ball Game, or you're singing Sweet Caroline, or you're singing whatever it is, seventh inning stretch, we comes around, we all stand up and we sing something. Even if it's just we sing the national anthem at the beginning of the game. Sports, specifically baseball, but a lot of them, this is where we get communal singing in a way that there is something really powerful about people singing together. So it makes sense that you find a resonance personally with that type of environment. So back to the theatricality of worship and how that works with things. When I've taught Intro to Theater, I've taught that class a few times, one of the first things I ask them is, what is theater? And then whatever their answer is, I push them to question the boundaries of that. Not necessarily because I agree with what I'm questioning, but I just want them to think about where the boundaries are. And one of the things I ask them is worship theater? And usually what we ultimately end up with is that it is theatrical. It is not theater. We say the same thing about sports. Sports is theatrical, but it's not theater. And I would agree with that. That's sort of where we end up landing usually. But I do leave open for the fact that some students might say that they see sports as theater. They see worship as theater. When I'm participating in a worship service, this also comes a little bit from being a minister's kid. I'm not always good at just allowing myself to listen. I'm thinking about the delivery. Oh, mom would have done that differently. Dad would have done that differently. Oh, Pastor so-and-so that I used to go to church with would have done that differently. I liked the way they read that scripture, layperson, but if they had emphasized this, I would have read that differently, right? Because it's all performance. It's not performative, it's genuine, but it is performance. So I'm curious and critiquing, hopefully not critically, but critiquing. And it's very hard for me to turn that off. That doesn't make it less worshipful. And hopefully I'm the aberration. Most people are just absorbing the thing. But yeah, I think the theatrical nature of worship, there's something powerful. If a Maundy Thursday service, I haven't been to Maundy Thursday here, is often a very theatrical worship service. We get dimmer, we get darker, we find ourselves in darkness, and we end with candles, and then we end up with complete darkness in many spaces. It's powerful. It's Christmas Eve. The theatricality of the decorations, we use vestments that we don't use at other times of years. We have decorations that we don't have at other times of year. There's something theatrical about that. We get to the end and we have candles and we sing Silent Night, and that is theatrical. Those theatrical elements are there to impact us, to do something to our reaction. It's manipulative in the way that theater is manipulative. But it's not manipulative maliciously. It is to reinforce the thing that we're already feeling. At a praise and worship chapel service, like you experience at Hope College, they're doing the same thing. Your mileage may vary on the effectiveness, right? Because I go to chapel probably once a semester at Hope. Partially I do that to remind myself just how important it is for some of our students. That for some of our students, that is a huge part of their experience at Hope College. It's not really a huge part of my experience at Hope College, but it is for some of us, some of them. It is for some of our colleagues. A buddy of mine, when I was there the last time, said, "Hey, how often do you go to this? Do you like this?" I said, "Yeah, I like it. It's cotton candy. Cotton candy's great. I can't eat just cotton candy. But cotton candy's delicious. Like, why would I not want cotton candy every once in a while? But if I ate cotton candy all the time, I'd be really frustrated." So, does that answer your question? Yeah, there you go. Yeah. Which Mike wants to race there faster?
Yeah, Steve Norton. I want to ask you to push a little bit more
Please.
with lighting and the theatricality of worship, because in many worship services, there's, I would call it minimal change or adjustment in lighting. You know,
Yeah,
Maundy,
absolutely.
Thursday, Christmas Eve, certainly. But generally speaking, on a Sunday morning, the light is pretty constant.
Yeah.
Any thoughts about that?
Some of it comes down to executability. The thing we just watched takes a lot of rehearsal, takes a lot of time, takes a lot of prep, takes a lot of these things. You can go to churches where there is a lot of lighting design, right? Oftentimes, churches that have more of a praise and worship style, right? You get a little more rock and roll kind of light to it. And that's designed to enhance the worship experience. Again, it's designed to help you feel and connect with the work, with the prayer, with the song, with the reflection. In the same way that underscoring, I could read a scripture and just read scripture, but if I read a scripture and a talented pianist improvises underneath and goes to a minor key as I talk about the valley of the shadow of death, and then when I say, we'll fear no evil, it goes bling, and we come out of that. Like, that is powerful. And there are worship environments where that is the norm. That takes a particular skill set and a particular type of gear, like the lighting equipment, the technological equipment. It's a challenging job. It takes a lot of people and it takes a lot of time. The prep that you do in advance is what allows you to do it instantly in the moment. If you've got that prep, you can do that. But you have to, like if right now you told me, go light our worship that we're about to go to theatrically, I'd say, okay, do I just have 4 light switches on the wall? That's not gonna look as good. It's not gonna look bad, but like, sure, I might say, okay, when we get to the sermon, I'm gonna shut off the lights over the congregation to direct focus. Sure, I could do that. But is that gonna be like, chunk, and they all turn off? That's actually distracting. If I can fade them, that might draw our attention there. But if there's like a just thunk of the lights off, that's like a message, okay, lights off, go to sleep. That's not what we're trying to do, right? We're trying to, like, I don't think Pastor'd like that very much. So I think that it is a tool, just in the, I'll switch the direction we're talking about this. Just in the same way that you can do worship without rich lighting design, you can do theater without rich lighting design. You can do dance without rich lighting design. It's a fascinating thing to have my primary art form be a thing that I think is often unnecessary. If I have 2 actors and a really good written script, really well written script, excuse me, and I have 2 acting blocks that are just cubes, and I tell you they're chairs, or I tell you they're a carriage, or I tell you they're a park bench in New York City, or I tell you they are a rock on the top of Mount Everest, or I tell you they are whatever, there's no scenic design, there's no costume design, but I've told you this is what they are, and then 2 good actors can do something theatrical, and there's no lighting, and I can believe it. I can tell you it's the dead of night, right? If I come out and it's 5 actors in the beginning of Hamlet, we've got guards, we've got Horatio, and we know that there's a ghost out there, I could light that and make that a really cool scene. But if they perform it well, we get the spookies that like, ooh, ghost out here. So in the same way that a worship service can thrive and be emotionally resonant and theologically resonant without rich lighting design, the same is true of theater. But if you've got the ability, and you've got the time, and you've got the opportunity, let's do it. Let's turn it up to 11. Let's really dig in and make something happen. That's how our audience, to David's point, do you think about the audience experience? I think almost entirely about the audience experience. It's not so much about the actors, it's not so much about me. I can do something really cool with lights, but if it doesn't further the story, if it doesn't serve what's happening on stage, if it detracts, if it distracts, if it happens and everybody goes, ah, that's neat, instead of going, oh, I felt something. My job is to make you feel and to make you think. And if I'm doing something that detracts from that, I'm not doing my job. Yeah. Mike from the other side this time. Everybody gets a turn.
So I'm Norman Burt, and my question is, I noticed in the clip, what I really looked at was the darkness, because you manipulated not just light, but darkness.
Yeah.
And I wonder how darkness fits into your theology.
A lovely question. I think that, so let's talk about it artistically first. Light is only significant in contrast to darkness. If everything on stage is the same brightness, that's not very interesting. Take it even further, if I light the stage theatrically, but I also leave the house lights on so the light is on over the audience, that's not very interesting. I need the darkness. The darkness is part of it. I need the darkness. To get poetic about our world, we live in a world that is filled with darkness. We are surrounded by darkness. And that sounds very scary when I say it that way, and I don't mean it to, because we are the light in the darkness. Our faith, our connection to God. Hide it under a bushel, no, I'm gonna let it shine, right? You know, we could sing a whole song, everybody. Now, the comparison breaks down a little bit because I said I need the darkness. I need the darkness to do my art. I need that contrast. In the world, I don't want to need the darkness in that metaphor. I want us to be all in the light, to be connected to our faith and be connected to God and be connected to safety and whole. And I would argue that that's what we're seeking in heaven, right? But the reality of our existence is that there is darkness around us. And the contrast of the darkness around us and the light that we experience in worship or in prayer or in the love of family, the love of friends, it makes it easier for us to see that light and recognize that light because we see it in contrast to the darkness around. Does that answer that? Does it? Yeah. Like I say, it's not a perfect metaphor, but yeah, the significance of light being a motif in the biblically as well that is associated with God. So,
Eric Paul Elzinga, I really love what you did today and how you explained the lighting in the theater. What about architectural lighting? For example, this room had a lighting expert put together the light in here. Have you ever done anything with architectural lighting?
I have not like specifically minimal. My parents co-pastoring a church. They did a whole thing where they renovated their sanctuary, and they'd already talked to all of the architects and whatever else, and then it was what light bulbs, what lamps should we put into these sockets? And I have consulted on things like that before. Why would we want a particular color temperature, warm versus cool light? Why would we want it recessed back into the housing versus sticking out further? Why, some of these things. Architectural lighting is fascinating. Liminal spaces, hallways, and things like this. I'll say this: I notice architectural lighting both good and bad, a lot. I don't often have an opportunity to fix it. The hallway that where my office is in the DeWitt Student Center, Student Cultural Center at Hope College, that hallway is one of the most threatening and oppressive rooms that I've ever been in. It is also the hallway you walk down to go meet the president of the college. I hate it. There are lights that are too far apart. They are not bright enough. They do not cover enough space. It is oppressive. Also, my door to our office complex happens to be in the darkest spot between two of those lights. Students don't find it. There's a big old sign that says Eric Van Tassell, Ken Chamberlain, Eric Allberg, right here, lighting and sound department, and people walk past it multiple times because they don't see it. It's not that dark, but it's the darkest spot in the room. It's bad design. It's bad architectural design. I can't solve it because I don't have however many millions of dollars it would take for them to let me rip up the whole thing. And I'm not a electrical engineer, so I'm not going to be able to solve it. But I see it all the time. Want a really cool example of architectural lighting on Hope College's campus? Look at the outside of the Kaizinga Art Museum at night. It has these beautiful folds, and they're like sort of like waves or scales. And the light that is at the base of each of those has this wonderful ombre effect as it fades from bright white to the darkness beyond, but a hard edge on this side as it's overlapped from the previous side. Beautiful. And that's architectural lighting that is not meant to be functional. It's meant to be inviting and beautiful and artistic. So both architectural lighting is fascinating because in the same way that theatrical lighting is, it's a balance of function and form. So, yeah.
I'm sorry, Dawn.
Oh, come on,
I'll chat with anybody afterwards. I'll chat with
Yep,
anybody.
You'll have to talk after, because I have to stop. This has been fascinating.
Wonderful.
Thank you,
Thank you.
very, very
Yeah.
much. Yes.
Like I said, this is my favorite thing, so I'll happily talk about it with anybody.
Yes, I would love to ask you too about like stages and theater in the round, like all
Yeah.
that has to be challenging as well. Yeah, thank you, thank
so
you. Couple things to say. First of all, next week I want to invite you back. Kristen Gray took a group of students to Oman, and they're going to come next week. The theme of their journey was, "Who is my neighbor?" Who is my neighbor? So they're going to talk about that, and they're going to talk about Oman next week, and the Al-Aman Center, the RCA mission supports in Oman. So I hope you come next week for that. I also hope that some of you able-bodied people would now realize that it's Pizza Sunday, and we need those tables set up, and we need these chairs around them. And if you all could help with that, that would be fabulous, especially if you also get to worship on time. Thank you. Thank you.